You ever notice how some people love to minimize everything you do? You can be doing the cooking, the cleaning, the planning, the organizing, the remembering, basically holding the whole thing together. And somehow they'll still manage to say, you barely do anything. And they say it with confidence, like they've done a full audit of your contribution. But here's the truth most people don't realise. When someone keeps telling you that you don't do anything, what they're really saying is I've gotten so used to your effort that I've stopped seeing it. That's the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let me give you an example, not to complain, but because it's the perfect illustration of how this dynamic works. I used to do about 90% of the cooking, batch cooking, meal prepping, the whole thing. But I kept hearing, you barely do any of the cooking, it's mostly me, over and over again. So, well, one of my toxic traits is if you keep telling me I am something or I don't do something, I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. So I stopped cooking completely. And shocker, the freezer emptied fast. Then came the complaints. There's no food. So my response? Well, since I apparently never done any of the cooking, I'm really confused about how everything disappeared the moment I stopped. Silence. He had nothing to say. Because here's the truth. People don't notice your effort until they lose access to it. And this isn't just about cooking, it's a whole host of things. And it happens everywhere. It happens in your relationships, friendships, families, workplaces, everywhere. So here's how to recognise this pattern in your own life. When someone only notices things that you don't do, so you could do 10 things, but they only pick up on the one thing you didn't do. Well, when your effort becomes expected, not appreciated. So once your contribution becomes routine, they stop seeing it as effort and they start seeing it as your job. Or when they rewrite the story to make themselves look like the one carrying everything, even when reality is the complete opposite. And they get defensive when you stop over-functioning, because suddenly they have to face how much you were actually doing. They act confused when things fall apart, as if the universe just randomly stopped producing cooked meals, clean clothes, emotional support, and organisation. So why do people do this? Well, because people minimise what they rely on, because admitting they depend on you would mean admitting they're not doing as much as they pretend. Minimising your effort protects their ego. It keeps them comfortable and you over-functioning. And the moment you stop, reality hits them harder than they expected. People who over-function don't realise they're doing it. They think they're being helpful, supportive, responsible. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're always the one stepping up, people will eventually treat your effort as the default. And not because they're evil, but because you've trained them to expect it. That's not your fault, but it is something you can change. So how do you break the cycle? Well, the first step is to notice what you do automatically. The things you do without thinking, because that's where your invisible labour hides. And then ask yourself if it's actually your responsibility, because just because you can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it. And then stop doing the things that no one appreciates, not out of spite, out of clarity. And let the natural consequences happen. If the freezer empties, if the house gets messy, if the emotional load gets heavy, that's not your failure. That's reality catching up. You don't need to do more. you need to set a boundary. Something like, I'm not doing that anymore. Short, clear, and non-negotiable. Being capable doesn't mean you have to carry everything. Being strong doesn't mean you have to be exhausted. And being reliable doesn't mean you have to be taken for granted. Your value isn't measured by how much you can hold for other people. So tell me, what's one thing you do for everyone else that no one ever notices? And what would happen if you stopped doing it? So just remember, you're allowed to stop doing the work people pretend you're not doing. You're allowed to let the consequences speak for themselves. You're allowed to step back from anyone who minimises your efforts. And you're allowed to stop over-functioning in relationships that underappreciate you. You're allowed to let people experience the reality they keep on insisting is true. If someone only notices your value when you stop giving it, they were never seeing you. They were just using what you provided. So I'll leave you with this thought. If you stop doing everything you do, who would notice first?